DOJ reserves right to not cooperate with certain House GOP requests. The Justice Department is signaling that it has the right to not cooperate with Hill Republicans' requests to peek into their ongoing investigations, a top official wrote in a letter obtained by Politico. Consistent with long-standing policy and practice, any oversight requests must be weighed against the department's interests in protecting the integrity of its work, Carlos Uriarte, DOJ's legislative affairs chief, wrote in the 5-page letter. Long-standing department policy prevents us from confirming or denying the existence of pending investigations in response to congressional requests or providing non-public information about our investigations. The letter, addressed to Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan, Republican Ohio, acknowledges the GOP's multiple requests for information during the last Congress but doesn't divulge any new information. Instead, Uriarte outlines how he hopes DOJ could have a productive relationship with Republicans in the new Congress, as Jordan had in previous letters accused the DOJ of stonewalling their requests, raised the possibility of a subpoena and said the committee could resort to compulsory practices to obtain the requested information and documents. It's an early marker of DOJ's position as Republicans pledge to probe President Joe Biden's administration over a laundry list of issues, including with a select subpanel that has a broad mandate to investigate the federal government. Conservatives have hinted they would use that panel to try to look into certain ongoing law enforcement investigations. The Justice Department letter cites a 1982 directive from President Ronald Reagan, stressing that the administration would try to respond to congressional oversight requests and avoid invoking executive privilege, reserving it for use only in the most compelling circumstances. Uriarte, an assistant attorney general, said DOJ would respect the committee's legitimate efforts to seek information, consistent with our obligation to protect executive branch confidentiality interests. DOJ also outlined guidance for potential hearings House Republicans might call, including which Justice Department staff might be able to testify. Citing a 2000 DOJ letter to Congress, Uriarte wrote that DOJ would not be making line agents or attorneys involved in everyday casework available to testify and instead would direct inquiries to supervising officials. We are available to engage in staff-level meetings to determine which information requests incorporated into your recent letters reflect the committee's current priorities in light of prior department responses and disclosures, Uriarte said. A Jordan spokesperson did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Josh Gerstein and Kyle Cheney contributed to this report.
We watch what is happening right now with the President of the United States. Not once, but now we're finding in 2 different locations classified information just out there in the open. It just goes to prove, and we're finding out now, after being sworn in, that this was discovered before the election. Another faux pas by the Biden administration, but treating law differently based upon your political beliefs. Treats President Trump one way, but treats President Biden a whole different way. That's why we had to provide a new entity from our church style to look after the weaponization of what's gone on, that you want an equal playing of the law to all Americans.
Do you see this matter regarding the classified documents found in President Biden's home going before that committee?
I see it could go from that committee or others, but I think Congress has to investigate this. Here's an individual that's been in office for more than 40 years. Here's an individual that sat on 60 Minutes that was so concerned about President Trump's documents locked in behind, and now we find it just as a vice president keeping it for years out in the open in different locations. I do not think any American believes that justice should not be equal to all. And we found from this administration what happened before every single election, whatever comes out that they utilize to try to falsify it, they try to have different standards for their own beliefs, that doesn't work in America.
Do you see a difference in that former President Trump denied repeated requests for all of his classified documents for more than a year, and President Biden's lawyers turned in documents after finding them?
No, because from one standpoint, they knew the documents were there. They actually asked President Trump to put another lock on them, so they were locked. You look at President Biden. He wasn't president. He was vice president. He held these in different locations right out in the open. He criticized President Trump. Did he utilize the Justice Department to raid President Trump? Did you think that was right? They knew this has happened to President Biden before the election, but they kept it a secret from the American public. He goes on 60 Minutes, criticizes President Trump, even knowing what he has done, and he wasn't president at the time. Now we find another location that it's at, but he refused to answer. His press secretary won't answer the questions. You watched them leak photos of sitting out files of President Trump. Where's the photos of President Biden's documents? Where are those photos at? He knowingly knew this happened going into election, going into interviews. This is what makes America not trust their government. You cannot have one form of law because somebody philosophically has a different opinion than you, and you can't use the Justice Department to go after people that are politically different as well. It has to be equal across, and what I'm finding what's happening with President Biden time and again, you go from a laptop saying it, not only that it wasn't true, but utilizing your own friends to go into companies to tell them to say the same thing, to try to knock down information, to try to make sure the New York Post story couldn't be printed. You should be offended by that. You are of the press. You should be allowed to write even when you knew it was true.